Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about the passing of Shonner. All right. Shonner has died, to my knowledge. Actually, I'm gonna cite my source here. So I watch a gentleman, by the way, whose channel goes by the name of Blueberry Wolf Bridge, and he covered this first. He was the first that I saw that covered this, right? And he said, Shonner has passed, right? And so I want to talk about this a bit because I had interactions with Shonner, and I think there's some interesting aspects of this from a tabletop role-playing game perspective. All right. So first of all, what was my engagement with Shonner? So if you don't know, let me explain what Shonner was. Okay, Shonner was a YouTube Dungeons and Dragons commentator, just like me, right? So just like me, he commented on Dungeons and Dragons on YouTube, right? And he commented on a bunch of other games as well. I don't care about those, like it's D&D or nothing. To me, actually, that's not correct. Actually, there was value in him commenting on other tabletop role-playing games because we should be aware of other tabletop role-playing games as Dungeons and Dragons competitors, right? So it's totally okay to play other tabletop role-playing games. Never at more than 49% of your play, though. I don't think you should ever be playing anything more than I don't think you should ever play any other tabletop role-playing game more than Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons should be 51% of your table play. You can play up to 49%, right? But always remember, whenever you're running another tabletop role-playing game, the only value of doing that is to understand Dungeons and Dragons competitors, right? So you can interact. It's almost like if you own a restaurant, you can go to another restaurant and eat their food so that you're crushing them, right? Like, yeah, that's worse. Okay. Or if they're doing something interesting, you can adjust to defeat them, right? And I even think running other tabletop role-playing games is helpful to be a better dungeon master, just to see, other mechanics, but make sure you keep that at 49%. That's important, right? So, but he definitely commentated on Dungeons and Dragons on YouTube. So from that perspective, Shonner and I were the same. We were both YouTube Dungeons and Dragons commentators, right? And actually, he was fairly successful at it. He had been doing it a while, and he had followers, people who really cared about him and enjoyed his content, right? Just like me, right? The other thing there were a lot of things that I'm going to try. I'll just take a minute here and just list all the things that me and Shonner were the same, right? He is a very intense, adamant person. I'm exactly the same. I'm an intense, adamant person. You never hear the word whatever out of Shonner's mouth. If you stated something, he had an opinion on it. His opinion was clear. It was, that's right or that's wrong. And he was not a wishy-washy, pleaser, right? Like, so in that vein, me and Shonner were the same, right? The other thing Shonner was he was an absolute template grognard. He literally embodied the word grognard. He was old and he was a complainer. And so Shonner was a grognard, like definitionally a grognard, right? He was a champion of OSR tabletop role-playing games. He was a champion of, I think he was a champion of some indie tabletop role-playing games. In that area, he was quite different than me. And then, well, I guess I have championed some OSR or some indies. I recently championed Crown and Skull, and I think I've championed Star Trek Adventures pretty well too. I got a playlist if I haven't seen that. And so, so even from that perspective, we were similar. So there's a lot of things that were similar to us. Okay, that's what Shonner was and who he was, in my humble opinion. Okay, now let's talk about my interaction with him. All right, so the way I would deal with Shonner is it would happen about every 3 months, right? And so every 3 months, so I have a YouTube channel, right? And I listen to my own videos, not all of them. I'd say like a third, right? Nah, probably a quarter, right? just for quality control. Is the sound level right? I know that sounds shocking that I would be concerned about my sound level. I do the best I can with what I have, right? I'm not a professional, but I definitely have quality control standards. And it's hard for you to see that, but I delete quite a few videos before you ever see them, right? Because they're wrong for one reason or another, right? So that's one area too, because I don't edit my videos, right? And I think Shonner was the same way. He just turned on the camera and go. So I think Shonner was the same as me on it. And that is a distinct decision that I definitely, stand. And me and Shonner I think we're on the same wavelength there. Like, you're much better off cutting a video and putting that video up and not editing. And the reason why is you can use the time that you would have been editing to make another video. That is the whole reason I don't edit. And I think Shonner did exactly the same as me. So me and Shonner had a lot in common, right? Now there were a lot of things we disagreed about. Also, I should say, we were both YouTube Dungeons and Dragons commentators. We agreed on nothing on Dungeons and Dragons. Literally nothing. Right? Like, we had completely polar opposite views on Dungeons and Dragons. And so I would say I disagree with every single thing that Shonner ever said about Dungeons and Dragons. So we were both YouTube Dungeons and Dragons commentators, but we both believed the exact opposite, right, about Dungeons and Dragons. So he was an old grognard, and he was a grognard. You don't have to say old grognard, that's redundant. Grognard means old complainer. He was quite literally an old complainer. Grognard was a curmudgeon, definitely a curmudgeon. I desperately try not to be a curmudgeon, but I think I have curmudgeon days, right? And then also, I should say, yeah. So I'm going to start to talk about a few things where and let me get all the way there. Sorry. How did I deal with Shonner? So every 3 months, as a quality control standard, I will open an incognito window and search my own name. J. Scott Garibay, and sometimes I'll add in, another tag, and then just see what comes up to the top of that, right? And it never ceases to amaze me. People will take my video and run it and just play it, right? And then they'll pause it and they'll stop and they'll talk about points, right? Now, I have very mixed feelings about this. One, I don't do this myself. I think it's a little invasive, right? And so I would never do this to someone else. I don't do this, right? But I have sympathy for people who do this because I think they're trying to understand what I'm saying, right? And that's and so that's what they're doing, is they're literally listening to me and then saying, okay, this is what I think, this is what I think. And I do feel it is interesting to me that that in order to understand what I'm saying, people will listen literally sentence by sentence and comment on it, right? And so, and I think it's interesting that my content is strong enough to endure that rigorous of an examination, right? And that's the other thing, is my content is examined, right? Like sentence by sentence, word by word. And I understand that. I have a lot of sympathy because my content is extremely freighted, right? Every word has layers and layers of meaning. Every sentence has layers and layers of meaning. Every paragraph has layers and layers of meaning. And there's even meaning in the pattern of the videos I do, right? And there's things that I've set in place for people to find a year from now, 10 years from now, when I'm dead, right? Like that have not been found yet. Absolutely not, right? So I really understand. I have a lot of sympathy for people who, need to break my content down like that in order to attempt to understand, right? I understand. I have sympathy for them, and I had sympathy for Shonner, and he would do this all the time. He would just take my video, play it, and then talk over it and give his opinions, right? So that's how I interacted with it. It's every 3 months, and I didn't even listen to not even a tenth of the number of these he did, but I was aware that he was doing it, right? And so that was interesting, and that's generally how I would interact with Shonner. So, okay, Last part here that I'm going to get on Shonner is let's talk about what what do I think of his passing, right? So first of all, by the way, yeah, let's say this. So me and Shonner were not friends. I did not agree with him on anything he said about Dungeons and Dragons, and I do not believe he ever had a kind word for me, not once. Right? So honestly, I think it would be too strong to say we were enemies, but we were certainly rivals, and we were not friendly. Right? So why am I even taking the time to talk about it, right? Well, here's a question. So he's passed, right? So I wanted to take note and just say, hey, Shonner's passed. Because it was helpful for me when somebody else told me, when Blueberry Wolf Bridge did this video and informed me that, to inform all of us, but I was in that group, that he had passed. I was very thankful for that. So one, there's some signal boosting here. And here's the thing. Why? So Shonner should be honored? No. In my humble opinion, Shonner should not be honored, right? I don't think he did anything significant enough to be honored. But but he should be remembered, and his efforts should be acknowledged. And so this is me remembering Shonner fondly, in that I'm not happy he's gone. I wish he was still with us. So that is so I'm sad that Shonner has passed. I don't think he was a man worth honoring, but I do think he was a man worth remembering and a man worth acknowledging, right? And also I think that's the best way to say it, is I'm remembering Shonner, and I'm acknowledging his passing. And I'm acknowledging that he did the same thing I did, right? And I think that's and that made him worth remembering, taking a moment and remembering. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion on the passing of Shonner. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion on the passing of Shonner. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.